Take a thorough history. Lesson 2, hurry up. 30 years ago, I met a teenager whom I'll call Sammy. And though he'd never spoken a word in his life, it was Sammy who taught me to listen, to really listen, and why in medicine the story matters. On a hot, dusty New Mexico Monday, somewhere in the 90s, I stood in a cramped exam room, trying to make sense of what I saw. For the moment, Sammy, whose severe cerebral palsy had him confined to life in a wheelchair and made it impossible to speak. For that moment, he was okay. But looking at the two angry red lumps on his back, okay wouldn't last much longer. Grandma, or so I assumed, stood beside Sammy, her face expressionless, but for a myriad of lines mapping out 70-odd years of decisions and consequences. I paid little attention to the lines, or to Grandma for that matter. But those two red, skin-threatening lumps on his back, just below his collar, they held me fast. Damn, this would need surgery, and soon. The spinal rods that a previous here-and-gone surgeon had placed to straighten Sammy's back had broken free of their years-long grip on his upper spine. Now, only a few layers of skin stood between the rods and Sammy's inevitable infection. Time wasn't on our side, mine or Sammy's. I'd taken a new job in a town far away, and I'd been leaving New Mexico for good in 3 short weeks. For the last 2 months, I had avoided any complex surgeries before I became the latest here-and-gone surgeon. I couldn't risk complications. My replacement, the next surgeon, wouldn't be along for 6 months. But Sammy's untethered rods, those skin-threatening lumps, upended my plan. The surgery to revise and re-anchor his implants was thankfully uneventful, until it wasn't. He's not making much urine, the anesthesiologist said as he fiddled under the OR table with Sammy's catheter. How much is not much? None, really. None? And that's how it started. The straightforward 3-hour surgery turned into an intubated, renal failure disaster in the ICU. By the end of the week, as his kidneys slowly recovered, I began to relax. The moving truck was coming the next day. 2 weeks after that, my wife, my infant son, and I would follow. The ICU doctor assured me Sammy was on the mend. When I arrived the next day for rounds, Sammy's breathing tube was out. Good news. Except Sammy was screaming. Not moaning, not whining, but screaming at the top of his lungs. 2 things were obvious. Sammy was hurting, and his lungs were perfect. We checked him head to toe with our hands, scans, stethoscopes, and labs. We combed every inch of Sammy, but to the best of our knowledge, Sammy was fine. But the shrieking never stopped. It lasted a full 24 hours, and then another, and another. Sammy kept screaming, and I, along with a rack of consultants, couldn't figure it out. The nurses, who took care of him 24/7, looked exhausted. Through it all, his grandmother sat vigil by his bedside. She cooed and patted. She blotted endless rivulets of sweat from his forehead and sang in his ear. Still, Sammy screamed. The moving trucks had come and gone. Our car, mostly packed, stood ready in the driveway. 1 week left, and Sammy howled on. Test after expensive test told us nothing. As I drove to the hospital for another set of rounds, I prayed that Sammy had calmed down, that whatever drove this enigmatic pain had miraculously broken. If not, I prayed for the words to tell my wife she'd have to make the trip alone. I couldn't leave until I figured this out. As the elevator doors opened, Sammy's wails gave me a good morning. There, of course, was Grandma rocking by the bedside, and the night shift nurse attended to the myriad of lines, catheters, running in and out of Sammy's, well, his everything. The poor nurse looked as if every molecule of energy had been sucked from her body. Save for the tiny reserve she held back to kick my ass for whatever I had done to cause this. Grandma tapped my arm, as she did every morning, and repeated the request we denied each day. Can I hold him? I looked at the delicate tubes and wires in Sammy's frame, which practically dwarfed Grandma's, about to repeat my stock answer of no. I hesitated. The nurse caught my pause, and from under a tight brow, she shot me an "Are you out of your mind?" look. Grandma's hand rested patiently on my forearm. Always Grandma. I'd never met Sammy's parents. Why ask? Those broken rods, the urgent surgery, the kidneys, they all took precedence. The cerebral palsy, his fragile life, took a back seat to what mattered. The rods, the skin, infection. Back then, I was a young surgeon who knew his role. I dealt with tissues, not issues. What did Sammy's story matter? Grandma's eyes held my gaze. They were a vivid blue-gray. Funny, I hadn't noticed before. I looked at the poor nurse, whose spattered scrubs and tousled hair spoke of the endless night. She shook her head and mouthed "no" over Grandma's shoulder. Okay, I said. Let's get into your lap. I barely heard the nurse grumbling over Sammy's in-my-ear screams as we gathered up the tubes and I lifted Sammy from the bed like an 80-pound toddler. Enveloped in the smell of his sweat and dry-mouthed howl, I lowered him onto Grandma's lap. And then it happened. 2 weeks of shrieking agony came to a halt. As she rocked and cooed, Sammy's tight, spastic muscles melted like candle wax as he curled against his grandmother's tiny body. With a mix of fascination and exhaustion, I pulled a chair next to Grandma and sat. Just sat. That's when Sammy's story unfolded in halting English. His parents had died on Route 66 shortly after he was born. It was Grandma who raised him, Grandma who protected him, Grandma who rocked him every night. He wasn't hurt. He was scared. He wanted what we all want, to feel safe. As a surgeon, a guy who mitigates harm through the tip of a knife, I didn't need to know his story until I did. Sammy was teaching me to listen. And when I did, Sammy stopped screaming. Thank you.